America's team.
And it's all over! The Browns are winners today!
What's up, everybody out there? Welcome into another episode of the Barking Brown Show. I'm Jacob, Mr. Casey Kinnaman, and Nick Carnes. We're brought to you, as always, by our friends over at SeatGeek. I keep saying it, and I'm just going to keep on saying it. So I'm sorry. You hear me say it all the time. But it's summertime. It's time to go to a concert. It's time to go to a baseball game. It's time to go to some preseason SummerSlam. It's almost time to go to some preseason football. That stuff's coming up. Go get your tickets over at SeatGeek. Use our promo code BarkingBrowns. Get $20 off your first purchase. If you're on YouTube, please smash that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. We'd appreciate that.
And we'll love you.
We will love you. Gentlemen, how are you? Even though we're recording this after we already recorded an episode, but I'm pretending that we didn't.
Still fantastic. I'm excited for this episode. As someone who grew up playing with their hand in the dirt, I have an affinity for the big uglies up front. So to get to talk about it, I'm pretty pumped with you guys.
I've got a different piece of information this time on the nerd side of things. I bought this game. It's called Vampire Survivors, and basically, if it looks like it could be played on the Super Nintendo, I love it, and I may or may not have binged it for like 10 hours on Sunday. So, highly recommend. It's like $5.
Nice.
That was out of. Yeah, so we're going to talk about some interior offensive line, and we are graced by another fantastic, well, same guest, but still fantastic.
Just as fantastic. And he helped educate us on the safeties, and we gained a little bit of knowledge. We're going to keep that going, keep that momentum going. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Cleveland.com's Lance Reisland.
Yeah, I did it right this time.
I always believed in you, Jacob.
All right, guys, we're almost there, man. We've almost hit every position group in the overview. It's crazy because we got to this week realizing we got to do multiple of these episodes to get through. Like, we thought we had all this time when we started doing this series before this season, and then we're like, holy shit, training camp's next week. We got to get this thing in. So we're talking interior offensive line, our second to last position review. We'll do the quarterbacks later in the weekend. So we'll start off the top. Lance, I'll give it to you as the guest to start, but let's talk. We'll talk guards and center, so the interior offensive line. I mean, this group is as good as it gets in the NFL.
Well, you got Teller, Petonio, and Posick. So, the Browns' offensive line, even with Callahan, I'm really looking forward to Dickerson. But even with Callahan, those interior guys for the Browns, they're the maulers. Those are guys who are physically trying to vertically displace you. The outside guys, Conklin he gets nasty, but for the most part, Jones and Wills, those guys are position guys who are pass blockers. And in the Browns, now what people don't understand, I'm a big Kevin Stefanski run game fan. Why? Because it's diverse. They run inside, outside zone, pin and pull, lots of counters, power. They give you a bunch of different personnel groups. They're going to formation you to death, which I like. I think it's important, especially when you go against these elite D linemen. The thing I really like about those interior guys is they get vertical movement, right? So they're going to push those defensive tackles back, which gets Nick Chubb and those guys. That creates automatic running lanes, those cutback lanes that I've heard you guys talk about. Those all happen with those interior guys. Those guys are also athletic enough to pull, right? Yeah. So those guys can move. They do lots of different counters where they're going to pull and kick. They're going to pull out and around, depending on if it's 12 or 13 personnel. Lots of different looks. Very, very impressive. I think Dunn is a very, keeping Dunn was very, very important. And I think Brian Allen was a very big pickup because he gives you starts. He's got 32 starts in his NFL career, which I think just helps in terms of getting, he knows Dickerson from their time in out in LA. So that helps when you have, some knowledge of what the guy is going to do offensively. But the big thing for me interior wise and the tackles is how do they, it's different with Dickerson. It'll be different. And I think that's the key with those interior linemen is, are they going to continue to be maulers and work those double teams up to the second backer, things like that. Callahan is a why guy. Why would all the time in practice you stop and tell me why? Why do you have this? Where Dickerson is a rep guy. So it'll be interesting because I think both styles can work, but Callahan is kind of the guru right now. And the reason they were good when different guys go in is because they rep it and they do it. So that's a big transition for those interior guys. They really like him early on in camp. So I'll be interested to see how it goes. But yeah, those three guys interior, they're as good as it gets in pass pro. They're nasty when they run block. They try to finish blocks. They're the foundation of that offensive line without question, and they're really, really good. All three are all pro like caliber guys without question.
I really hope that people will appreciate what we have right there, especially if you consider this is Batonio's 11th season. You know, like that's we for so long we were accustomed to turnover, just rapid turnover. To be able to have a guy who's been there since 2014 and made it through the dark years. I mean, it was pretty grim there for a while. Came out the other side. He's one of the statesmen of the team. Someone who really a lot of the offensive linemen gravitate around him. And you got Teller going into his 7th season. Pochich is a veteran himself. This could potentially also be the last year we have those three on the interior. And they've made moves to kind of show you that by drafting Zack Zinter. I know they got some hopes with Cohen, and I just hope everybody appreciates what you have there this year because it has been special, but it could also be running its course.
It's funny to hear you say that, Casey, because I was going to lead in with the consistency, the continuity that the Browns have had. I'm going through a team by team review right now on Fantasy Life because I'm an addict to that almost as much as I am the Browns. And one of the biggest things that they always talk about is how many starters are you returning on the offensive line from the previous year? And to be able to come back and say, I know we're doing interior offensive line here, but to return all of your starters is a big deal. Right. And especially when you're looking at, is this Posic's 3rd year with the Browns now? 3rd year? Yeah. Right. So you've got him that he's played with Teller and Batonio for the last 2, and Teller and Batonio have been together for longer than that. That's the type of chemistry you can build over time that helps just helps you. This gives you an advantage when you know what the other guys are going to do when you've worked with them for so long. And so I think my biggest question when we look at the interior offensive line is last year we saw Joel really struggle with the back injury and maybe not still be a damn good offensive lineman, but maybe not be the gold standard Joel Batonio that we've come to appreciate and be so blessed with. So this year I'm just hoping because obviously, Joel's said nothing, but he wants to keep playing and he still believes he can play at a high level. And that, so the biggest thing that I'm looking for when I look at these three guys is that bounce back from Batonio, because I think that would be one of the biggest differences that we could see when you're returning all 5 starters.
To build off the point about Dickerson, I think it was Teller, and I know Batonio spoke on it a little bit, but they've talked about that difference, like that Dickerson's kind of he's going to get in your face. Like he's kind of going to get in your face and be that kind of motivator, that kind of coach, I guess, because you talked about it, Lance, with Callahan, it was so philosophical. Like he's just been there, man. Like he just flat out has been there, done that, seen so much football that, he kind of, hey, lays it out on the table for you. And they just, it seems like from the early conversations between those interior guys that it's kind of a 180 in terms of just demeanor, not necessarily what he's teaching, but maybe some of the ways that he's coming off and kind of how he's been teaching that. And I just want to see what that looks like, because you said it, Callahan's one of the best to ever do it. He's one of the best to ever do it. They did a really cool thing letting him go down with his son in Tennessee, because when the hell are you going to get that opportunity again? Callahan's probably towards the tail end of his career in the NFL, probably at some point. So, it's he gets that opportunity. He goes down there. But, man, there's a lot of love for both of those guys that were brought in. Not just Dickerson. Is his first name Jacques? Yeah, it's Jacques Césaire, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. I remembered his last name, but even the assistant offensive line coach that you brought in, both of those guys are pretty well respected. Everything that I've seen from their other stops and I've read about who they are as coaches, they're like, yeah, these guys are good coaches too. So yeah, you're kind of taking, you lost a great offensive line coach, but you still have two coaches that are well respected in this league to coach them. And I just want to see what that looks like. Is that different? Is that Mauler mentality different? I don't think it will be, but like, what kind of different ways are they going to attack the run game specifically? Because I think we understand how they're going to do pass protection. I think we kind of understand, a lot of that stuff looks the same, but I just am interested when the run game at times did not work last year. How different does that look? You talked about it, Lance, with like Kevin Stefanski's scheming of the run game. We know that he likes to blend with his coaches. We know that he likes to let his position coaches coach. So how much different does that look? Well, I'm not too worried about the interior because those dudes are really fucking good. Like, I'm very interested. I think it looks different. But when you got a dude, like, I don't know that there's anybody in this world that loves pancakes more than Wyatt Teller. Like, the dude wants to put you in the ground. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I thought his best year as a pro was last year. I think quietly Wyatt Teller had his best career year last year. He was really the only guy that was super consistent because, there were some injuries and some things with the other guys along the line of scrimmage. He was by far the best offensive lineman they had. And I was kind of shitting on him going into the year that I thought maybe he had fallen off a little bit since 2020 and 2021. And he went out there and just was absolutely nasty. And I just think, enjoy it. Because you guys said it, like, this might be the last that all three of those guys are there, but they're really freaking good.
Well, you go back to one thing's always for sure. You win with people, right? So regardless of who coaches, those guys are good. So regardless of what level it is, if you have better players, you win. And rarely at that level, if you're not, you have to be better and you have to go out and win. And that sounds kind of, redundant and kind of, cliche, but that's really what it comes down to. When you talk about what the difference is, it's how long do you stay on a double team? What hand are you using when you're in pass protection in terms of fighting the hands? What are some techniques backside on power? Little things are little things, but a double team is a double team. And that Mauler mentality, like you said, that's a Mauler mentality. Are you galloping into the double? Are you guys splitting the difference? Is one basing? Are you attacking the hip? There's different ways to look at a double team, but a double team's a double team. So it comes down to terminology. How long do they stay on a double team? Is the line of scrimmage more important than the second level? When I was an offense coordinator, we block a line of scrimmage first, right? If we didn't get to the second level, great, but we're going to block the line. Some people don't think like that, and there's been success a ton of different ways. But those guys inside are really, really consistent on what they do on a daily basis. And that's when you talk about Wyatt Teller, the big reason Wyatt Teller dropped off a little bit, in my opinion, was the pass protection. They went from 3 to 4 pass protections to about 9 because of Deshaun Watson. Now they're sliding both ways. They're on big. He's got to help on an odd front. He's got to, they did some different things. And he really was just the mauler his first couple of years, right? All they did was run the ball, and he was just mauling people. Then all of a sudden he had to be an empty a little bit more than he's ever been in. And they showed him some looks that gave him some issues, some twists and some movement, some stunts. And then like you guys said, to his credit, he's picked out all that up really well. He does, and he pass protects like he run protects. And if you got my thing about all these guys that you guys talk about, it goes to what we've all learned. They practice like that. Those guys, Wyatt Teller is trying to kill you in practice, and that's what he does really, really well, and that's why they're good at what they do. It's not a faucet, right? You can't turn it on and off. And these guys don't. They're consistent in what they do. It's kind of fun to watch.
Yeah. Do you anticipate a schematic difference if they're going to be in shotgun more? Do you think they're going to run more inside zone, or do you think they play the hits? Do you think we're still looking at pin pull and mostly outside zone this year?
Well, I think what you're going to get is you're going to get a very similar run game. I think there'll be a little bit more inside zone out of the gun because it gets an easier angle. But that being said, I think the big schematic difference is pre-snap, right? I think you get a lot of gifts, right? If they give the Browns a coverage they like, we'll take it. I don't think there'll be many run games just called, right? So you think about RPOs. Everybody always says that. Well, Dorsey's an RPO guy, right? Run, pass option. So there's, run it left or right. You could pass. He never gets stuck in a bad play, and that's what I always tell Dorsey. Now, the thing that I love about Dorsey is his pre-snap movement. His pre-snap movement does two things. One is he goes slow, right? So they'll trade the tight end. They'll move the tight ends from right to left. Real slow. It just tells that offensive line what the front's going to be. Then they go motion with the receivers, and they'll go late and they'll go fast. which is going to declare coverage for the quarterback. So, and a lot of people do that, and you guys know that as well. But what they're doing with movement pre-snap and what they're doing with the idea of never being in a bad play, I think though they're saying, and I think, for example, I think the run game is going to be better because they're not going to run into in many heavy boxes. Because if they get a 6-man, 7-man box, the ball's going out. And that's what you get with Dorsey is that they don't run, and there's times as an offensive lineman where you tell the offensive, I don't care if there's 12 in the box, we're running the power because you got an attitude. And that's part of football too, is you have to have a feel and things like that. And I think that's what Dorsey will add to Stefanski. Stefanski is a really analytical, by the book, where Dorsey has a little bit more feel. You can say whatever you're supposed to run on 2nd and 4 in the red zone, but if Cooper's hot, how do we get him the ball and things like that? So I just think they're going to mesh very well together. As we all know, it all starts up front, but schematically, I don't see a big difference. I do see more inside zone, but I still think they're going to outside zone. I still think they're going to pin and pull. I still think they're going to run those multitude of counters. I've always said this. I could be wrong, and maybe Dorsey has more influence, but as a coach, you can only call what you know. And people are like, well, don't they know everything? They do. But I had 5 run plays. And the reason I ran those 5 run plays, I was a gap scheme guy because I know how to fix those. Now, on the board, I can draw up inside zone for you all day. But out on the field, I don't know if I could fix everything if it broke. When I ran counter, I ran power, and ran my pin and pull, I could fix those things. Or at least I had an answer. Maybe I couldn't fix it, but I had an answer for my player. Yeah. So I don't think Stefanski goes away from what he does completely because he wants to be involved. But, yeah, I think they'll add more they'll have more pass options to make sure they get the box a little bit lighter. And then, obviously, I think everything will be a check with me. They're never going to run into a bad look. If they see it. So not a ton in terms of like on paper. I don't think it'll look a bunch different. Pre-snap it will, and they'll have more options in my opinion.
Lance, I know I'm going in a little bit of a different direction here, but I can't tell you how many different fantasy podcasts I listen to. And whenever the Browns come up, it's always run first, run first, run first. That seems to be the prevailing thought no matter what group of people I'm listening to. And so it definitely sounds from listening to you like you are on board that there's going to be a significant philosophy change in terms of the pass run balance in the offense.
Well, I think I do. It's balance. Balance is not for me. It's not about 50-50. That was never balance for me. Balance is, can I do what I want when I need to do it? So if I need to run the ball, can I do it? If I need to throw the ball, can I do it? Yeah. Some games that's more 70-30. Some games that's 30-70. You have to be able to dictate. That was always my balance was, can we do what we need to do when we do it? Now, what I see from the Browns, so let's say pin and pull. I've heard you guys say pin and pull a bunch, right? So if they're running pin and pull, they like to run it out of 13, out of 12. Well, you can run pin and pull out of 11, right? It's the same thing. You're blocking down, kicking out. But now with the pin and pull, I see them running that power, having those guys block down and get to the edge, but also having a bubble screen or a quick slant on the backside because if they put 8 in the box, you can get rid of it. So I don't think schematically it changes. I think the options they have within the scheme changes, right? So it's Stefanski's pin and pull. It's Stefanski's counter game with Chubb, but maybe now you spread them out. Now it's a 6-man box, and if they don't give you the box you want, now you throw it. And that's kind of what I think schematically changes, not the actual run. The pin and pull is pin and pull, right? It's what they do with it. And I think that'll be what people see differently. They won't be running into heavy boxes. The ball will be out. You'll see Elijah Moore on some option routes and things like that. But I think they're going to be in a ton of 11, which they haven't run a ton of. They're going to be in a ton of 11, but the run game will stay the same. You just have all the window dressing accoutrement on the outside with it is what I think you'll see.
I'm a big Zack Zinter guy. And everybody, these two can attest to that. And I've done a lot of the writing and some speaking on Zack Zinter. It's interesting because I really like our lads, what they do on their website with the depth charts and things like that. And they currently have Zinter actually as your number 2 left guard, which I think is interesting. Do you see, I was trying to figure it out. I'm big picture guy on draft day. I love the draft. I put out a mock draft on Monday, which was just, I guess today I'm recording this on Tuesday. This is probably Friday. And you guys are like, what are you talking about? It wasn't yesterday. But I put out a mock draft. So I always love thinking about the draft and what it means long-term. Do you foresee Zack Zinter being the guy they want to take over when Joel calls it quits? or do you think he stays more as kind of maybe the future at right guard, or do you think he has the skill set to slide in on the other side?
Well, I think he can play both, right? Because for what they do, right? So these guards got to be able, when you see them in practice, they all work both right and left. They got to be able to pull. They got to be able to block. There's only so much you do as an offensive lineman. You just have to be really good at it, right? You're blocking down, you're reaching, you're pass protection, you're mic blocking. It's how you do it and schematically how the coach wants you to do it. But there, like every position, there's a certain set of rules that they have to have. Now, what I like about Zinter, like you're saying, is that first of all, he comes from a team that huddles, and people are like, "What do you mean? What is that big deal?" Because now he's getting 2 play calls. He understands what it is to kill a play. He understands, going into a play, they're going to kill it if they don't like it, or they're going to easy out, and they're going to call it. Once again, going back to Dorsey never being a bad play. So the idea that he comes from a hardball offense at Michigan tells you that he's ready to play. The learning curve won't be as long for him because he understands having multiple play calls, long play calls, things like that, which in most colleges you're not getting, right? You're getting one-word signs and they're off and going, right? So that's kind of what I think helps Zinter. I think he'll play right. I think he'll be the swing. Luke Whipner, I thought, had a great mini camp, if that means anything. Once again, when you're in underwear as an offensive lineman, it doesn't mean anything till the pads go on. But I thought physically he looked really good, better than he did last year. But I see Zack Zinter being that third guy this year, right? That swing. You want to swing tackle, and you want to swing guard. That third guy who can play both if necessary, because then he gets the reps, right? If you get into that fourth guy, you lose reps. And I don't care what level it is, you win with reps. The more reps they get, the more fronts they see, the more blitzes they see, the better they are. But to answer your question, yeah, I see Zack Zinter being the rotating guy, and I see him being either the right or left guard of the future, most likely for Bitonio, depending on how many years he has left.
When I was looking at the center position, obviously you got Ethan Pocic, and when they brought him in, it wasn't his job. It was Nick Harris's job. And we all know what happened the second play of the preseason. Harris goes down, Pocic steps in, and then belonged right away. It was evident that he was going to be a dude. Well, they went and signed another guy this year, Brian Allen. And if you look at Brian Allen, how many starts he's had when he's coming over, it's very similar to the Pocic situation. And they already had Luke Whippler. They drafted him the year prior. Do you think that the long-term, that they view Whippler as the long-term answer? Or do you think that this move to get Allen kind of signifies that they're not sold on him?
We don't have answers to a lot of things, and I look forward to talking to you guys in terms of after I see the pads, right? So I want to see what the rotation is and how they do things. But I will say this about Pocic as compared to Nick Harris. Pocic is a massive human. He's 6'5". He's all long arms. He's a big guy. Nick Harris was 6-footish. When you stand next to Pocic, he looks like a right tackle. So I think the thing that was going to hurt Nick Harris moving forward were those odd front teams, those teams that covered him, because that meant the Browns automatically had a double in their run game. Where with Pocic, they can work up to the next level a little bit and not have to stay on that double so long if they get a nose. So that's the first thing I saw about Pocic, is that Pocic is good enough to work on an odd front and get to the Mike back, or even front, but also handle that head up nose, which in the NFL, there are no odd and even fronts anymore. They're just fronts, right? And they're giving you different stuff all the time. And when he's covered or has a shade, his body type lets him move. And he fits into the mold of Teller and Bitonio. He's a pretty nasty guy in there, where Harris was nasty, but Harris was pushing 290, right? It's hard to be, it was just hard for him, where it's a little bit easier for Pocic because of his athletic ability and his size. I would see them, if they're high on Pocic, I don't know if they've seen him decline. That's a guy I really think anchors that offensive line, especially at center. He's a guy that you wouldn't want to hold on to, I think. But, yeah, I think Brian Allen's a great pickup. I think Luke Whippner, like I said, I thought he had a great camp. You worry about his body type, trying to get too big within that little body, because sometimes that leads to injury. But I don't know. I would say I think they're happy with Pocic right now, and I think Allen's a great backup. And I think Whippler's a guy who can back up all three in there, right? So now that you're talking about, listen, Bitonio doesn't practice much anymore, right? Teller gets a day off. Pocic, so they got to have guys that can get in there and play multiple positions, which I think they have now. Which again is going to kind of a Callahan thing in terms of getting guys reps so they're ready to go when they get in there. I think Dickerson will do the same thing, but I do see Pocic as being around as long as they can afford him and he wants to stay. But he's really, really good.
Do you know that they are like this almost the exact same age, Brian Allen and Ethan Pocic? They're 2 months apart.
Really?
Yeah, you would think Posick really just comes with that. He was at Seattle. He's really, really good. But you talk about a steal. When they got him, I immediately had a post. I thought, that's a talented kid who's got a lot of ability. And when you stand next to these guys, like, I don't know, they're just – Posick is just another guy. He's just a massive, massive guy. And you talk about being able to, your best, you're being available is the most important thing. And Posick's body type gives him the ability to be available for 17 weeks. And that's so much what it is, right? You guys just talked about it with all the injuries. Availability is huge, and body type plays into that. And how big and strong you are plays into that. Your flexibility plays into that. And Posick's a really good athlete who's big, strong, long, and seems like he's very fit. So I think he's a guy who's going to be around a while if they can keep him.
I know this is getting a little bit into the weeds here, but given all the offensive line injuries we saw last year, it doesn't feel so far-fetched because you brought up Michael Dunn, and you also talked about Whippler having that ability to play multiple positions. And so I definitely agree that Zinter's going to be the guy that you're looking to as your third guard. But let's say you got to go deeper. Do you think the Browns would be more likely to rely on Dunn, who's kind of been there for a while now and done it, no pun intended, or is Whippler the guy that maybe they're hoping does have that versatility and could step up to be your guard 4?
Well, if you remember, like when there's been years where Bratonio goes out to tackle, as coaches, we all say this is what's going to happen. But then when it happens, you're like, is that really what we want to happen? Right. Yeah. So I would say, that they have the plan in mind. But I'll tell you one thing about Kevin Stefanski that I really like in practice. Those guys all practice as if they're starters. And I've been to a number of practices where that's not always the case. Those guys truly believe they're starters. They get coached like starters. So I think more than anything, they're comfortable. The big thing about a backup is, do they know what the hell they're doing, right? And, at any level, in the NFL, if you know what you're doing, you at least got a chance, right? So that's kind of what I think the reps do. I think they're comfortable. Now, once again, if they get a major injury, do they have confidence? I would see Zinter, let's say, something was happened early in the season. Well, would they have confidence in Zinter as they would week 10? After 10 weeks of practice. So maybe Dunn's the guy just because of experience, and then it moves to Zinter because of the ceiling he can reach, right? And Whippler's a guy who they really, really like, but is he a guy, and you need those guys too, a guy who can play, maybe not a starter, but can play center if you need him for a quarter, can play guard if you need him for a quarter, not going to kill you. And the way a guy doesn't kill you at any level, especially up front, does he know where to go? Does he know who he has? Because if he can get in the way, he got a chance. And that was Cal. Why, right? Why? Who do I have and why? And that's what you want to see. That's why there wasn't a lot of mistakes up front because of that. And that's why you saw when these guys went in, all these guys that were hurt, they go in and they're kind of seamless. It's because they practice that way and they feel like they're starters. And the coaching staff does a great job of making them feel like starters, in my opinion. Now, I haven't been around NFL too much in terms of being at live practice, but it's pretty impressive. And I've seen it carry over to games. So I think that's what you'll see. I think they'll have a plan, and then, like all of us, I think they'll adjust the plan if something drastic happens.
Well, while we're in the weeds, let's stay there. The only player that had more smoke than Michael Hall going into the draft was Javion Cohen. The Browns were linked to him pretty much throughout the process, interviewed him multiple times. Did you get to dig into any of his film? And if so, do you think he has what it takes to be in the plans eventually?
Well, yeah, he's got. So when you start getting guys who are undrafted or late round picks, I really believe that Andrew Berry is a character. What can you give me? What traits do you have? Right. Mm-hmm. So it's not about productivity. It's what NFL traits you have: size, speed, future ability, ceiling. Where can you get to? Right. And I think that's if you look at like Alex Wright out of UAB, there's a perfect example. Alex Wright is a different person so you're athletically, physically. Alex Wright's going to have a big year because physically he has the tools, right? But they didn't teach him the things that that he has: size, speed, ability. I think Cohen, if you talk about like Michael Hall, dug into him much more than I dug into Cohen. Now Cohen's just a guy who's got some traits, right? So I don't know a lot about him. He's a guy that I'm looking forward to kind of digging into once we get that roster done in the practice squad. I feel like I got about 90% of them done, but there's some guys I don't know a lot about. And like you, I'm going to be kind of looking at him. Now I know Cohen's got some potential and they like him. Michael Hall, for example, Michael Hall is here for third downs because Michael Hall's not very good on first and second down right now. He will be, but you can't teach what he can do. You can teach him what he struggles with right now. You can't teach the get off. You can't teach that stuff, that twitchy, that
Yeah.
suddenness. But he doesn't take doubles on very good. He'll learn that. He'll turn into a grown man and be able to take a double team on. But he doesn't have to do that right now. He doesn't. He'd have to come in third down, get in that wide 3, and come like an animal. Come like just be praised, and right. And that's what the depth of that D line allows them to do right now is he can kind of be like a nickel guy, right? He's just you think about Newsom. That's what he's going to be this year. He's going to be a nickel 3 technique. That's all he's going to be. He's going to be a nickel guy, comes in and rushes the passer. So, no. But to answer your question about Cohen, have not done a ton on him. Watch him a little bit, like what I see on film. But any guy who plays on Sundays, you guys know this. You watch film. They're awesome on their college film. So it'd be interesting when you see, like you said, I'm looking forward to that Monday, July 29th when the pads go on.
Yeah, because that's the beauty of this of the defensive line is if you look good in practice against this defensive line, I can work with that. I can work if you're going up against Za'Darius and Ogbo and Dalvin and Shelby Harris and all those guys, and you show some flashes and you can hold your own here and there. It's like, okay, you probably can hold your own in this league if you can go up against this defense in practice. And it's just, it's all the iron sharpens iron mantra that you talk about. And it's like, you're finally at the spot where the top of this roster is so good that if the bottom of this roster can compete with them in practice, you got something. Like, I think that's where this roster is.
But there's going to be some defensive linemen that are going to not make the team. They're good. That are good. That like I'll just give you an example. Siaki Ika fits this defensive scheme well. I didn't love him coming out of Washington, but I loved his body type. Well, I thought he was too heavy last year. He came back. He looks fit. He's lost 30, 40 pounds. He looks great.
Thank you.
Now it doesn't mean he's you want to see it, but my thought on that as a coach is that he's locked in, right? He's locked in all offseason on what he's eating and how he's working out. It doesn't mean it'll automatically carry over, but now at least he has a seat at the table. Doesn't mean he's going to get fed yet, as my dad would always say, but now he has a seat, right? Alex Wright, Isaiah Thomas is another guy who's improved himself physically. Like these guys physically, when you look along the line, I sent out a tweet when I was at camp because where they practice is like, I'm sure you guys have been down there, but the defensive line, like I got to get out of the way. That's how you're right on top of them.
Yeah.
God, they're 12, 13 deep with guys who are physically imposing. There's going to be some defensive linemen that they're going to get cut. That they have some equity maybe there if they want to go another route because there's some guys there. That's a deep defensive line, like you said.
I'll tell you, Lance, I really appreciate your insight on Ika because, man, there's been multiple times now. So, the Browns put out the photos of camp and the guys participating and that stuff. So I've put Siaki Ika up next to rookie year Siaki Ika twice and gotten mostly roasted for even proposing the idea that Ika has lost weight and is in better shape. People are, and I'm just looking at it. It's like I feel like you can tell this pretty obviously. So for somebody that's actually there to confirm that, it feels really good because I'm rooting for Ika. We're all rooting for Ika, but it's like it just feels like people are ready to dismiss the dude after a season, and it's like you need that time sometimes to develop your body and to get where you want to be.
Well, especially, I consider NFL lineman just like a freshman in college offensive lineman. Freshman, when you go to you're the best lineman at your high school. You're 18 years old. Now you go to college. That's a 23-year-old man. And sometimes it just takes, unless you're that elite guy, which there's very few, right? It takes time, right? Same thing in the NFL, especially up front. Shelby Harris is a grown man. When you look at Shelby Harris and you look at Dalvin Thompson with their helmets off, and then you see Michael Hall physically looks that way, but he looks like a little kid with his helmet off, right? He's a young kid where these are grown men who have anchored in there for years and years and years. And, I think Ika realized that, he could do what he wanted in college at his weight, and then all of a sudden he couldn't do that. And there's times at practice he would just get handled because simply he was up too high, and Teller and those guys would get underneath him. So I just give him credit because he didn't stay status quo. And I think he's given himself a shot to have a chance to be in the mix. All those guys have, and that's all you want is you want to give yourself a chance, right? And that's not sure he'll do it, but it's a tough group to make. But he's given himself an opportunity. One
last piece here, because while we've been live, Denver paid one of their guards, and I'm not sure how to say his last name, but it looks like I'm just going to attempt. It's Quinn Miners. Miners.
Nailed it. You nailed it, Nick.
Okay, perfect. It's something that seems crazy to me is they put out the top 10 guards in annual salary, and neither Joel Bitonio nor Wyatt Teller are in the top 10 of their position.
Pay people early.
Yep.
Identify, pay early.
Well, and that's you guys, that's I'm learning that from the people like you. I watched the film, but that in terms of like, it seems like you got to get on these guys early, right? You got to get on these guys, and if you're paying all that money for scouting and you're paying all that money for, people always get on Andrew Berry because he doesn't trade his draft picks, and I'm always like, good. Now I'm not always for it, but at least he's saying, you know what, this is what we did. This is our plan, and I don't care what the plan is. I tell everybody, they get paid a lot of money to have a plan. The only bad plan is no plan. And if your plan is we're drafting our guys and we're going to stick with them, well, then you live with it, right? You live or die with that. But that's not, go bouncing back and forth. I'm with you guys. These guys have stability here. It's a very stable bunch that those guys run in the show in terms of how they pay people, and so I'm with you. I'm with you. Pay them early and keep them here so you can build some continuity.
Lance, we appreciate it, man. Second episode you did with us tonight, coming out later in the week, and by the time everybody sees that, we really do. We appreciate your insight. I feel smarter. I said this talking to John Vogel, who we did a preview episode we recorded prior to this for previewing the Eagles. I feel smarter and also a little dumber because I was like, oh, shit. Like, I'm not on this level, So, like, but I appreciate it, and I really do. And we've had some back and forths before. You've been on the draft shows with us and done some of those live things that we did with the network last year and before we went out on our own. And I just wanted to say, like, I think that what you do, you put in a way that everybody can understand it. Like, right. I think anybody, whatever football knowledge, experience, whatever it is, they can understand what you're saying, what you're putting out there. And I just wanted to say that I appreciate you and thank you. That's all. That's it.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on, and that's kind of the goal, right? And we're all on the same team. We're all on the same path, right? We're all. My dad has always taught me, especially in the game of football, I'm a lifelong learner. Nothing I do or say is just what I know, and lots of people have lots of good information. The only people who I think struggle are the people who think their information is better than anybody else's. So I've always, I always enjoy talking with you guys. I enjoy your content, and I really appreciate you having me on and value in my opinion. So I appreciate that, and I look forward to talking to you guys again.
Absolutely. For anybody that's made it this deep in the episode, number one, if you click that subscribe button, we will love you. Number two, we've already talked to Lance behind the scenes. He's going to be in the Greenbrier when the Browns are there. We're going to have him on again. We're going to have on-site experience, knowledge, insight, the whole thing, because Lance is great, and he's going to come back and give us some more of his time. So be looking for that. We got all kinds of special things coming up. This has been a interior lineman, awesome Barking Brown show. Nick, he's Lance. That's Jacob. He's Casey. Go Browns.
Go Browns. What's